Hi! Recording Aster here. I think that I'm going to be posting this video around the end week of January, so welcome! This is basically the behind the scenes quote-unquote of how I treat my data. Some people were asking me if I'm going to be posting the results, and I wanted to give a little bit of a walkthrough on my thought process, I guess, on what made me want to do this kind of survey. So basically, I was really intrigued by the people that were replying to my tweet about the comment on Genshin Impact fans don't read, because I was kind of defending them because I personally believe that the lore is very disjointed. It is very scattered. As someone that has, dove into the lore for a very, very, very long time, I do believe that there's a lot of criticisms in the way that Genshin Impact writes them, and obviously it's not meant to be for everyone's consumption. And then other people were telling me that no, that comment wasn't meant to be for people that don't read, but the people that aren't interpreting it right, or kind of like have different interpretations or force down interpretations that are clearly wrong according to the lore, and those are the fans that don't read. So I was actually super fascinated by that interpretation that I wanted to do this survey. This survey was basically me asking, if you say that you're a lore player, what do you mean? Because obviously, if you say that, oh, I know Genshin Impact lore, that doesn't mean that you consume every kind of lore. And obviously, there's just so much information in Genshin Impact. Not only is it a game for 3 years, like bordering on maybe 4 years now that September's coming around soon. It's fascinating because not everyone consumes the same amount of lore. And obviously, everyone has different interests on what kind of lore they consume. So for example, I personally like character lore above everything else, and that depends on the nation on what kind of lore do I want. So I wanted to, instead of just asking, oh, what do you know about the lore? Because some people were telling me that, oh, are you going to do a quiz-bee style of survey? And I'm like, no, that's not going to give me the variables that I wanted. What I want to know is, what are the people actually reading or playing? And if I did a quiz-bee kind of survey to quote-unquote test lore knowledge, it's not really fair in a way, because some people are interested in Genshin Impact lore for specific areas, and this is the logic of what that was. So obviously, first and foremost, we have the player profile, which has the adventure rank, which has when you started playing Genshin Impact. I wanted to know this because I also wanted to know if just because you play Genshin Impact for a very, very long time, like you started in 2020, does that mean that you actually consume the lore, or are you just here for the playing other reasons, like for Abyss, for the gacha waifus, and stuff like that? And I wanted to know the frequency of play, obviously, and I wanted to see if these were factors eventually when I do my analysis. But the number one is for primary source and secondary source. I think that a lot of people didn't really read this second part. I can tell that a lot of people did not see this this message here, because when I got to this one, everyone was like talking about Genshin YouTubers, and I'm like, well, that's not exactly what I was like asking for, but you know what, sure, it is what it is. That's going to be an interesting data point when I do my interpretation. But basically, I delineated every kind of Genshin Impact lore, quote unquote, where you can find the lore. So obviously you start with the Arc and Dialect quest, and then it gets more and more obscure. So you have the ones that you obviously play most of the time, and then you have the ones that people don't usually see, which is in-game storybooks, artifact lore, weapon lore, monster lore, and then the lore from the books and the other currencies, because everything in Genshin has lore. The KFC glider has like one of the most important pieces of lore in the entirety of Genshin, and it's hidden in a limited time event, Twitch event, KFC glider. I am still pissed off about that, by the way. So obviously I wanted to know all of this, and yeah, that was what this one is. And the next one was secondary sources. Obviously, not everyone has the time to go through all of the lore, and sometimes they're just interested in one kind of topic. So I also went and saw this one. And I also wanted to ask, how trustworthy did they think these sources are? Some people said that they were completely trustworthy, which is kind of scary. That's a lot of trust. But I wanted to see if this trustworthiness also has a correlation with consumption. And I wonder if it means that just because you consume a lot of content from secondary sources, does that mean that you trust them? So I haven't started my analysis as of making this little etc. thing in the background, but I will be doing that later and I'll show you the results. Next is lore knowledge. Now here's the thing about lore knowledge. I couldn't find a way to actually test this, and I had to take some inspiration from the instruments that I used for classes, because we took a test before about political knowledge, and obviously knowledge about the politics is very, very vast, and that's the same thing with lore. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to just know the general perceived knowledge of the people on how confident are you in saying that you're knowledgeable about a certain topic. I picked the ones that are pretty scattered around. So obviously you have the Seven Sovereigns, which is a general topic. You have the Mara Divari, which is Mondstadt. You have Enkanomiya, which is Inazuma, and then Remuria, which is Fontaine, and then Fatui Harbingers, obviously, which is one of the bigger plot lines in Genshin. And then I wanted to ask this because I don't really want to ask how smart is a person. What I want to know is, how smart do you think you are about Genshin lore? Because the greatest thing about Genshin lore is that we don't know what we don't know. You know what I mean? It's just so much. So I wanted to see the confidence level of Genshin Impact players and see if that actually has a correlation, like a positive or negative correlation with the consumption. I'll show you later if the results of that. Basically, I did a lot of correlation exams somewhere there. And then the next one is, again, this is just meant to test out confidence. And then attitudes is more so your opinions, or how agreeable do you think these statements are based on your own personal interest and efficacy when it comes to lore. So, in my opinion, this one is the more difficult part of the survey to actually create, quote unquote. This one is Genshin lore understood? Do you think that's true? Or do you believe that you need more lore? It's more so just how you perceive the importance of lore and the quality of lore in the game. That's what this part is in its entirety. And I just have the, the classic Likert scale of disagree, agree, and stuff like that. And then the next one is dissemination, the last one, because the framework, quote unquote, that I was using for this basically delineated exposure into involvement, which involved attitudes, like this one, and then participation. And that would be what dissemination is. If you know lore, does that mean that you go around and also share the lore with others, or do you keep it with yourself? I wanted to know if there was a disparity between consumption and dissemination, and I wanted to know if there was actually a difference, because the fascinating thing about this is that if I run these tests and it shows up that people are actually very open to sharing the lore with others through different kind of media rather, then that means that lore has become something palpable, which is really interesting. It's become something beyond knowledge. Like, isn't that just cool? I mean, something like, this YouTube channel, which technically just started off with lore, but then it also includes interpretations and then whatever this survey is, right? I don't know. I always like the idea of theoreticals being translated into practical. So dissemination is always important. And that's basically the whole survey. The way that I'm going to be doing this, on how I'm going to basically fix up the responses, is what I did was I downloaded the CSV or the sheets in Google Sheets, and then I replaced each answer here with a number. So for example, if it's strongly disagree, it's a 1, and the strongly agree is a 5. That way I have a numeric value. For example, okay, so when did you start playing Genshin Impact? For example, I think this was years. Yeah, years is the one that I get. So this one, because I translated it into numeric value, where 1 is 2020, and then 2 is 2021, and then so on and so forth, what I can get is the mean. And then I can also get, I can basically just try to sort it much easier. Also, it just looks better. And the app that I'm going to be using uses numeric value like this, and that's how they read the data when you recode it. So I'll show you later on how that's done. And then all of this, basically, this allows me to do more inferential statistics. If you don't know what that is, it's okay. Inferential statistics and descriptive statistics basically means that I'm taking them, the mean, the average of the scores, and seeing which one's the most prevalent, and then from that I'm going to see if there's any relationship between, for example, lore consumption and then lore dissemination, and if it's a positive or negative correlation. A lot of people were actually asking me, how am I going to make my inferences, and is it going to be bad if the audience that answers this is only a small percentage of the Genshin Impact community, and if they're already in a lore-centric environment? Most of the time, you make tests for that, and what I'm going to be using is the p-value test. Basically, if it goes beyond a certain number, I cannot make an inference on the whole population. But if it's less than 0.005, then I can confidently make say that this statistic is representative of the population. I think I can call it a parameter. I'm not quite sure. I'll get back to that later. I'm kind of just still ironing out how I'm gonna be analyzing this. So that's basically it. I'm going to see if I can back this up with as much numbers as I can, but other than that, it's just a for fun survey anyway. I'm more so interested in what these numbers mean. Also, yeah, these were just, find R, replace. Anyway, I'll see you guys later with the results and the discussions. Bye-bye!